Welcome to today's, webinar discussion around future-proofing your organization. I'm going to be focusing on how and why to elevate talent at every level in the organization, and using some real-life examples of what our clients are doing, what they're implementing, what they're seeing successful. So no waste today, just getting right into some of the good stuff and giving you access to some of these resources that you can use. So you can use them literally today. So first off, get to know me. I do see, so we have several clients on the call today. So I know many of you, but a couple people I do not know. So hopefully get a chance to interact with you after this. A little bit about me. I always like to start this way. Pretty much every new program and/or webinar. This is me and my wife and two kids. So my wife Amber, Hudson, and Harper are two kids. My wife's a partner in the business, has been since almost the very beginning in 2017. My formal education, my background is all business related. So I got my bachelor's from NAU and then my MBA from GCU. I only got working in the people space back in 2011 and have been doing this type of work ever since. Started Rockstar Workforce back in 2017 with a kind of three-prong approach, doing strategic planning, doing some hiring assistance, and then also doing leadership development. And we really doubled down in leadership development, and that's what we focus on today. And we have been for the last several years. So today is really around developing your people. A couple of companies that we're pretty intertwined with, TTI Success Insights, they're our assessment partner. We use them heavily in all of our programs. Every single person goes through a battery of assessments. You'll see a little bit of that today. And then AZ Growth Advisors, they're a local, within Phoenix, a local firm that specializes in peer groups and executive roundtables. I've been a member there for a long time, and I'm also an advisor on that team. And then we are heavy in construction, right? So we are members of the AGC and the ABA. I see a few of you on here are also members of those associations as well. All right, so why are we here? And here's kind of some talking points for today. Why are we here? I'll start there in just a second. And then we're going to get right into what are some of the resources that are going to help you tackle this challenge of developing people at all levels. But we're going to start with why are we here? And then we have, 5 or 6 different tools that our clients are leveraging quite a bit. And we want to share those with you today. All right, let's start with why are we here? Like, why do we decide to have this conversation today? And, what brings us to the table today? Well, a big reason is we're seeing a shift, and we have seen a shift in the organizations that we work with in the past couple of years. We're also doing our research, and we're seeing a shift in just the market in general. So if you go do some research at places like ATD, that's the Association for Training and Development, or Society for Human Resource Management, or Harvard Business Review, I don't expect many of you to go to those resources, but those are the ones that we go to kind of see, hey, what's going on? We want to have a pulse of what's going on in the people side of business. And the studies we look at are why do people want to work for companies? Why do people leave companies? And we've really seen a change in the last about 18 months after COVID. Right? So after COVID, there's a big change in demand for more work-life balance or more flexibility, more flexible work environments, which we're not talking about today. So I'm sure some of you have heard that and that's been exhausted, that topic. So we're not talking about that today. That's often the number 1 or 2 reasons people are being attracted to companies. So if that's not something you already have in your offering and you can have that in your offering, we strongly recommend to consider it. But oftentimes the number 2 or number 3 attribute or things people are looking for or reasons why they leave companies is because they're looking for growth. They're looking for opportunities to find a spot and grow in their career, even if it's only for 2 or 3 years. I know that's sad for some of you to hear. Some people are looking to grow for 2 or 3 years and then unfortunately go somewhere else. But if you do a really good job of developing them and showing them a path of how they can grow their career with you, you're going to increase your chances of keeping them happy and keep them engaged. So that's the method that we want to double down on. So we've been working with companies to help them do this, is create that long-term strategy to develop their people where you're not losing anybody. And again, going to share with you some of the top most requested and most liked tools and resources that we use. But also, I also talk about kind of the strategy as we're going through each of these, and there's 5 or 6 of them. We'll spend a few minutes on each one, and I have the chat box open or Q&A box open, so feel free to ask questions, and then I'll either answer those along the way or at the end, depending on if it relates to the time. All right, so number one, and these are not in a particular order in terms of like preference. It's actually more of a system. So the reason this is number one, role clarity, is it's utterly important for people to understand what it is they're doing in the organization and how they impact the organization. And it's also important for managers to understand what people are doing in their roles and why they're doing it. So we use a patented process to help create role clarity by jobs. What does that mean? What's a fancy word? What's that fancy term, role clarity? Essentially, let's make sure everyone understands what they're doing and why they're doing it, and there's no ambiguity. There's oftentimes ambiguity about why someone's doing a responsibility. Or maybe their responsibilities change, or maybe they get additional responsibilities, and then they're asking questions about like, well, is this still my job? What's my job title? So this is a process that you can use. Today is not meant to be a deep dive and to train you how to do this. I'm going to quickly show you the resource, like the worksheet. And then if you would like to dive deeper, you can just reach out to us and we can kind of show you how to do it. There's also instructions on the worksheet where you might be able to do it yourself. All right, so three big takeaways. It drives engagement. So people who understand their role are more connected with it and happier. It eliminates uncertainty, which I kind of already touched on. And it can create future plans. Because as you're having conversations with people talking about their roles and where they're at today, you can start to sprinkle the seeds of what their role might look like in the future. And that's going to trickle into a development plan, which we'll get to in a few steps. All right, so role clarity. What you see on the screen here is a blank worksheet. And I'm going to show you one for me that's filled out. And so the idea here is you're going to start by bringing a few people together. And I mentioned that there's instructions on here. So there's the instructions. We're not going to read those right now, but they're there. What you do see in the bottom half of the page is my input from me and my team of why my role exists. And we did this one for me about last year. We recommend doing it about once or twice a year, especially as your role changes. So we, 4 of us came together and we brainstormed why Adam's role exists within Rockstar Workforce. So we're not just looking at what are all the tasks that Adam does, but really it's why does it exist? If he wasn't here, if his role wasn't here, what would we be missing? So what you see there is a whole list of things that we decided why my role exists. That's where you would start. We then took that information and transferred it over onto the worksheet on the right-hand side. And we do provide steps on exactly how to do that. And you'll see on the right-hand side is my finished product. And at quick glance, kind of quick overview, what you're looking at is 5 what we call key accountabilities. These 5 key accountabilities are very clear to me now. I know exactly what I should be doing. I know how much time I should be giving them. And I also know which one we determined is most important to least important. So if you look at like category E, it's ranked number 1, and it is keep the strategic plan top of mind and ensure we are disciplined and stay the course. And then how much time should it take me? About 10% of my time. And then you'll see an actual column. That's what we were talking about. Okay, how much time is Adam actually spending on this? And it was only about 5% of my time. So then I had to use that to kind of determine, okay, how do I want to make some changes? One more thing I want to call out on this, look at category C. Category C is the second most important item, and it's facilitate leadership programs. That's a big part of what I do in my role. But you'll notice the numbers are quite off. So the ideal column, that means an ideal scenario, how much time should Adam be spending on this? And it's about half the time we determine I should be spending doing facilitating programs. But my actual number is quite a bit higher. It's actually 75%. So what does that tell us? You can probably guess. What it tells us is Adam is spending too much time facilitating. He needs to pull himself out of that role, delegate responsibilities so he can do other areas. So he's not facilitating so much. So you see, you can also use this tool to look at how do we need to be managing our time. So it's helpful for role clarity. It's also helpful for managing our time. All right, so that's resource number 1. I'm going to go on to the next one now. Again, I'm going to go fast. So if you have questions on these or you want to dive deeper, you can try to hit me with questions now, but we can also connect afterwards. Identifying potential. Now, this is an important part of the process. So it's almost kind of linear. So think we clarified the role. The person now understands what their role is. And now we're going to sit down and talk about their potential. Now, there's a variety of ways to do this. This is probably a tool that you've seen before. So we've created our own version and want to make it available to you. It's a simple 9-box. And we're going to give it to you in 2 ways. We're going to give it to you in what you see on the screen right now. And this one is like color-coded with labels. It's really for you to understand how the worksheet works. But then I'm going to give it to you in another way, which is blank. And the blank version, you could actually use with your team members. So what are some benefits of using this? It can foster real conversation. So if you use it the right way and you have like a one-on-one with your team members, it can foster real talk with them. It can also help identify development needs. So if they are not identified as like a core rock star, that should help you open up the conversation to identify some areas they can work on. So I'm not going to explain exactly how to use it on this slide. I'll go to the next one. So here's a blank one. So when we say use this one with your team members, there's a reason. I don't want people to know that we're labeling them. And I'm not implying you should label people. So if you use this blank version that we can give you access to, you can put this right in front of them, have a one-on-one, and say, hey, let's have a conversation about your potential, like within your role within this organization, but also your performance. And rather than you talking first, toss it over to them. So ask them, hey, where do you think your potential is, low, moderate, or high, to be a top performer here in the organization? And then where do you think your current performance is, low, moderate, or high? And wherever those two of those intersect, that's where they're plotted. And then you guys have a conversation about where they plot themselves and how do we continue to grow you and develop you to get to that top right corner, right? Because that top right corner is the rock star status. So how do we continue to move them to that right side corner? So a couple caveats here. You need to have some trust with the individual. They need to trust you. You need to have a relationship in order to have real conversation here. If you don't have trust with the individual, or if you have like a damaged relationship, you might not want to jump into this. You might want to try to repair the relationship before you dive into a tool like this, right? But it can be very, very effective for having candid conversations and talking about someone's future development. All right, on to the third one. All right, so third, success plan. This is a version of, actually, one of our partners, John Costco, created a tool called the Triangle, and we love it. We use some of the elements of it in this, and the purpose of this is to, again, sit down with the team member and talk about, hey, where do you see yourself in the future? And where do you think you're at today? What are some goals or some milestones you need to achieve? But also, what might get in your way, right? So what might get in your way? And the reason we're having this conversation is because it's changing the relationship between you and your team members. And it's helping you understand where your team members are trying to go, either within the organization or within their career, but also within their life. So imagine, like, how well do you truly understand your team members, and how well do you truly know what they're trying to achieve in life? And what if you did know that? What if you knew what their personal goals were, what some of their professional goals were? If you have that kind of conversation, it can help you steer kind of where they're going in the company. It can help you identify when they might exit, if they're going to exit, what their career trajectory might be if you do so. So very easy to use worksheet. Think of this as one kind of like a 11 by 17 worksheet. It goes from left to right. And we're going to start with the personal stuff, right? So the very, very top left corner, you're going to see personal goals. We got talk about some short-term goals, talk about some long-term goals. And the way we use this when we're working one-on-one is we're documenting this right along with them, taking avid notes. Because then what we can do is we can pull this back out in a month or two and have a real conversation about how they're doing. Be like an accountability partner with them, help them overcome some obstacles, help them reduce or remove barriers that might be getting in their ways. So they have to share their personal goals. The timeframes can vary. You can change the timeframes, less than a year, more than a year, 3 years, 10 years. You can choose to change those. You'll notice personal actions. So in order to do these things, what I must do, or what my goals must be. You might be surprised where these conversations go. They might be personal things like they want to lose weight. It might be, I want to buy a new car. It might be, I want to prepare our house for the new baby we're going to expect. Like, you never know where these are going to go until you start asking the questions. But what it can do is make your relationships a lot more dynamic than just a person that works with another person. So you talk personally, you're then going to get into career goals, right? So what are some short-term goals? These are going to be very specific to your organization, maybe promotions, maybe projects they want to accomplish, maybe things they want to learn. You're going to go short-term and long-term. Push them to go long-term. Some people will have a challenge here, not that they don't want to do it. They might not know what to say or what their goals are. So this is where you can kind of mentor them, support them, and help them create a vision of what their career could be. So if they're not sure what their long-term, plans are for your organization, it's your job to paint that picture because you want to keep the team members long-term. So it's your job to paint that picture and help create a vision for what their role could be in your organization long-term. And then career actions, so very similar format. In order to achieve these, what do they need to do? We're then going into personal traits. So this now we're looking at like, okay, what traits do you already have that'll help you achieve some of these goals, but also what might get in your way, right? So what are some areas for improvement? What are some things that are going to hold you back? And then distractions is that bottom right corner. This one is I laugh because when I fill out my distraction section, it's usually my kids, right? So it's identify potential distractions that could minimize your chance of success and what we do to avoid them. I love my kids, and but at times they could be a distraction for me achieving my goals. So I'm jotting that down and I'm putting plans in place. How can I avoid the kids? How can I avoid my kids? How can I avoid the kids being distractions? And it's often things like working with my wife to put plans around, our calendar and our schedules so we can do all the stuff we want to do. But other distractions might be other things. So it's a good conversation to have about what's going to get in your way. Okay. Again, this is something you can do in tandem with that 9 box we just reviewed. This would be like a one-on-one conversation, probably about an hour long for the first time. You might even start by spending a short amount of time explaining it to them, give it to them as homework, let them think about it, come back to you a few weeks later, a month later, and having it filled out. And then you guys can have real conversation because people need to give this some time, and they also need to think about what do they want to share with you or not share with you. Awesome tool. And if you really want to build that bond, I would encourage you to complete one yourself and share it with your team members. Because if you share it, they're going to open up. They'll be more vulnerable if you take the lead. All right, on to the fourth one. So psychometric assessments. Those that I see on the webinar today, I do know many of you use either our TTI tools or a different tool. We're not like we definitely are fans of our tool, but what's more important is you use a tool. So whether it's ours or somebody else's, we strongly encourage you to use psychometric assessments, otherwise known as behavioral assessments, to really understand your people so they can understand each other and they can understand you, and then you can communicate better. What you see on the screen here is just a glance at the platform that we use. So every customer we work with, their team members go through our assessments. Some companies send every single person through our assessment. Some companies send just those are our programs, but they're really trying to understand people. And what you see on the screen, I decided to put myself up there. So I'm going to show you a few of my charts. Again, this is not a training on the assessments, but it's more so reminding you that these tools are out there and they can be very, very helpful. So this is our platform through TTI Success Insights. So I can easily navigate through here and see any person in our system at any given time. I can also send them information. I can pull my phone up and look at all this information in real time as well. And we can also give our customers access. So if you're using our platform and you want to look at a certain team, you can do it within a minute or 2 minutes. Pull your phone up or pull your computer out, and you can look at all this information for your team very, very quickly. It becomes very handy when managing teams. So here's my my behavioral profile. It's then going to show you what motivates me, what drives me. Also, what doesn't drive me. You can see my bottom right corner. I'm not structured at all. I like to try new things and think outside the box. And that's a big driver for me. I'm also very resourceful. So I try to be very efficient in the way I operate things. So those are my drivers. Another one is, this just shows you a glance at some of my competencies. This page actually scrolls quite a bit. You're only seeing some of my top competencies. And then we also have several of like group charts or team charts. So this is just showing you what we call the disc wheel on the left-hand side. We can actually plot up to, I believe it's 100 people on that wheel. So you could imagine like a team is plotted on there. And then my driving forces wheel on the right-hand side. So again, not meant to be a training on the assessments, but just a reminder to that these types of tools can be very helpful, very effective. So TTI is a common one. Another common one is predictive index. Culture index is another. And those are probably the top three we see the most. So there's a few options for you if you want to explore those. And of course, I can help you learn more about any of those. All right. Now let's get into really what we do, the core of our business, training and development. So we are, of course, big fans of the programs that we've created, but we want to pause here and say, having some type of program is what's most important for your people, whether it's an internal program or whether it's a partner that you establish, like a coaching company or training company, or an association. That's a great place to go. Earlier, I mentioned we're members of Arizona Builders Alliance, and so that's a construction association. So a few of you on this call are members of that. A few of you are not, but they have great training at a pretty affordable cost that you can send people to throughout the entire year. So that's a great offer to look at. Pretty staggering statistic. I didn't want to go too statistic heavy in this session today, but I do want to share this one with you. Is the old school method of training, developing people. It's that 90-10 rule, where about 90% of the training development resources for small to mid-sized businesses, it changes once you get into the bigger businesses, but small to mid-size go towards about 10% of the employees. So these are often reserved for managers, right? So just think about that. Is some of you on here have some pretty large workforces, several hundred people, and thinking about the resources, how they're allocated. Is that number true? About 90% or 80% is going towards the top 10 to 20% of your team members. So this new school idea is, how can we find ways to develop talent at every level? Because there are people coming into the workforce, coming into the organization, and not getting access to any types of programs or any kind of training aside from maybe some mentoring from their manager, which is also helpful. So this led us to really work with a handful of our clients at a very new and deep level over the last 2 years, which then spawned off to a public program, but also a private program. And so the way that we unpack our leadership programs now, it's really broken off into like 3 tracks, right? So the foundations track is exactly as it sounds. This is building a foundation of leadership. So it really works for even a brand new person in their career, because we're just giving them a foundation. They don't have to be leading people. These sessions are all about people skills. So how do you interact with others? How do you communicate effectively? How do you manage your emotions? How do you influence the emotions of other people, those that are around you? How about your customers? So how do you manage emotions of your customers? And then also how to manage conflict. So that program is now running, it's going. And then we have 2 other tiers. So the performance track is all about how can we help people become better individual performers. And then the third track, the results track, is how can we help those that manage others get results out of their team? So these are things like coaching, delegating, building a team. And we have now a nice little series that people can go through. We offer this publicly. We also offer this privately. So you can learn more about this on our website. Our next program starts in just a couple of weeks. We then have another one that starts in July with AZ Growth Advisors, which you'll see more about in a second. And then we also have programs in Q3 and Q4. So you can go to our website and find more information on both of these. Has all the details on how often we meet, the investment, all that stuff. But if you want to talk about private programs, we also have those. Last thing I want to share with you is definitely a resource that's used by many of our clients, our peer groups. So we're big fans of the one that we're a part of, but I definitely want to give you other options, other ideas. But first off, what is a peer group? It's a great option for executives. What I just laid out for you in the training series is going to arm the leaders with quite a bit of ammo to lead well. But then the question comes up is, well, now what? What do I do next? Well, the next evolution, our minds, is a peer group. So a peer group, 30,000 foot view, what is it? Imagine you get to go once a month to a small group of people, say 10 or so people, like-minded. They're all trying to grow. They're all trying to develop with each other, oftentimes from different industries. You get to come together for a half a day or so and talk about your business, talk about the business challenges you're encountering. They just talk about their business challenges, and you guys get to share with each other different ideas and strategies of how to overcome those, how to grow your business, how to scale your business. And you also are building your network. And there's an awesome one here, AZ Growth Advisors. I mentioned them at the beginning of the session. We've been members and partners for 11 years. We also run our leadership series through them as well. So I couldn't talk about that one enough. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to their website or just reach out to me directly. I'm one of the advisors there, and we can give you plenty of info and see if there's a good group for you. There's other options. Those of you that are not in Arizona, EOS, Entrepreneurs Organization, or Vistage, both big ones that have presence in pretty much every state. So there's a couple other options for you. But I highly encourage you to join one of those if that's a point that you're at within your career or your team might be in their career. All right, so to wrap it up, I do have a few questions. I'll hit those real quick. But to wrap it up, we talked about clarifying roles, how to identify potential, how to look at plans for success, psychometric assessments, and development initiatives such as training programs and/or the peer groups. Again, all of these are ones that we're seeing used heavily within organizations that are trying to elevate their talents at all levels. So a couple of questions was the first one. Lots of great tools here. How do we get these? Feel free to email me directly if there's any specific ones you get. But actually, as I'm saying that, we're probably better off. Also, we're going to put this recording on our website, and then we'll email that recording out to all those that registered also that are on here live. And well, I'm sure we'll put a link on there so you just download them right from the website too. Let's see, when do the programs start? Well, our next program starts June 11th, and then we have a couple others starting one in July, and then a couple others in Q3 and Q4. Are your programs in person or virtual? Most of our programs are in person. However, we offer virtual programs too, just not as often. But if you're looking at like a private program, we can definitely talk virtual. If you're looking at a public program, we don't have any on the calendar for virtual right now, but we have talked about considering doing one in Q3 or Q4 if the demand is there, to be honest. Let's see. I don't see any other questions or chats. And how am I on time? Cool. I got in within the half an hour time limit, which I always try to do, so you can get back to your stuff. So unless anybody has any more questions, that is going to be a wrap for today. I want to thank you guys for joining live, and those of you that are watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. And please reach out if we can be of any assistance, or if you want to dive deeper into any of these resources that we talked about. That's a wrap for today, guys. Take care.